Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
This is the Edge of Liberty podcast.
Get ready for truth bombs, belly laughs, the kind of accent that turns car into a two-syllable adventure. Here's your host, Sean.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Edge of Liberty right here on the SHI Media Network. It is the 16th of March, 2026. I'm your host, Sean. Thank you for being here. Thank you to EOD Operator for being first in chat. I appreciate it very much. We're going to lot to talk about tonight. Talk a little bit about the UK being giant PNG. Talk, I just got a lot, if I'm being completely honest. But I want to talk about this first. This kind of popped up later in the afternoon. Phantom, good evening in the chat. Thank you very much. You can get in the chat if you want. SHR Media on YouTube. If you're watching from somewhere else and you want to join the chatters, click on the circle. While you're there, like and subscribe. Why the hell not? Take the poll. I want to see who's paying attention to those things. We also have memberships open. If you actually want to subscribe and become a member to the channel, you can do that as well. Try to keep it real cheap. But we also want to keep the lights on. Can't blame us for trying. There we go. That's better. So I want to start off. This popped up just before I went live, and I just felt like it was something that needed to be talked about. And this is from John Solomon over at Just the News. If you don't check out Just the News, John's great. He's, as BZ says, and I wholeheartedly agree, he's one of the last original actual journalists out there. O2 AMT, one of our moderators as well in the chat. Thank you, O2. And John Solomon uncovered the fact that there was numerous investigations by Chinese intelligence officials in multiple states for election voter registration data to conduct public opinion analysis on the 2020 general elections. Stated a once highly classified April 2020 National Intelligence Council memo entitled Cyber Operations Enabling Expansive Authoritarianism. The heavily redacted memo, quietly declassified by the Biden administration 2 years after it was written, had escaped most public notice. This means 6 years later that the U.S. intelligence community has yet to fully inform the American people or Congress on the large amounts, breadth, if you will, but I dumbed it down for everybody, large amounts of evidence it possesses of China's actions, how Beijing got the data, and what operation it has taken or contemplated. In other words, China was interfering with our elections. Nobody is shocked by that. The Biden administration knew about it. Nobody's shocked about that. And they kind of kept it quiet. I don't know why it is so hard for people to accept the fact that China is our enemy. And I mean, really our enemy. We'll talk about this with Iran. I've said it a million times. If you don't understand that, the whole point of the Iranian strike is to stop or stave off a direct conflict with China later on, because the fuel will be cut and that'll make it harder for them, yada, yada, yada. But if you don't realize, Mr. Ready Men, BZ's in the chat, good evening. If you don't realize China is our biggest enemy, then you're absolutely get your head in the sand and you don't want to believe it. And again, I've said this a million times. Not the Chinese people. Most of them are awesome. I have many friends from China. But the Chinese communist leadership of that country, who runs everything, and suppresses who they want, when they want, and how they want, because they're communists, and that's what communists do. And they're also, communists aren't people, just so everybody understands where I stand on that too. China's biggest goal was what Russia's biggest goal used to be, Soviet Union, I should say. It is to see to the undoing of the United States of America. All the other countries they deal with, whatever. But the U.S. is the one thing that keeps their power in check. It's the one thing that keeps them from expanding all over the world in different capacities. Either like we see in the South America and we see in Africa, where they're spreading their influence and they're raiding all their coffers for their heavy metals and minerals and materials needed for everything now, to getting involved with our elections. And I think in the time when all the focus is on Iran right now, it was on Venezuela before that, it'll be somewhere else at some point. You have to remember that China in the last few years was threatening Taiwan. They built that base in the South China Sea. They're trying to expand their military. Now, I know, and I've said on this show before, their currency and their budget and their gross national product is not as great as they sell it to be. I know they're hurting for money, but here's the thing that's different between America and China. China will just start taking what it needs from its people and the people around them in order to spread their power and spread their influence. Remember, this is the same government that was welding people during COVID into buildings. Billy Bob says, we decided to make China our biggest enemy. No, China decided they wanted to become our biggest enemy. That was China's choice. China could, if China wanted to be like Vietnam, Vietnam's another communist country, but Vietnam, after the last 25 years, has really just kind of kept to themselves. Why? Well, there's a lot of history into that. But China's decided to push all over the world and to grow their nuclear stockpile. And they want to, like I said before, just like Soviet Union, they want the downfall of America so they can gain power and influence and eventually have the strength to influence at least all over the world, if not run numerous countries. Some countries in Africa they already run. So, like I said, the difference is China doesn't care if it's their people, other people, they don't care. They'll run them over all day long. So the fact that this report was held back from our Congress and the public for the most part, it was quietly released. In other words, it was, we're going to stamp this unclassified, but there was already questions about our elections at this time, and people have already brought up China's interference and Russia's interference in our elections, and we don't really want this to get out there. It goes to show you once again what the Biden administration was trying to cover up. And this goes with all the different investigations that they had going on Trump and everybody else, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, Jack Boozers in the chat's right. We tried to make friends with China years ago, and they chose not to. And they still choose not to, despite Gavin Newsom getting down and orally copulating Xi when he comes to visit California. That doesn't mean that they're our friends. That just means he sees somebody who capitulates to him, and he wants to make sure that everybody knows it. So if you get a chance, I'm not going to read the whole story. There's a lot more into it, but go over to justthenews.com and you can read that one. So we're going to start off and catch up to Iran. And let's see, what are we, 2 weeks in now? Week and a half in now? Good evening, Listen Post. Good evening, Jay. Good evening, Jack. Pardon me. That came out of nowhere. Good evening, Billy Bob. I see you in chat, even if you don't like me. I still see you. So over the weekend, the island of Karg, and if you don't know what Karg Island is off the coast of Iran, that's the vast majority of the oil production for Iran comes from Karg Island. And the Trump administration has given them several chances to give up. And look, we found out today some interesting facts about Ayatollah 5.0, whatever on now, 3.0, the son of the Ayatollah who we killed while he was when all this started, Khomeini. And they're not, and they're doubling down on trying to attack ships going through the Straits of Hormuz. And they are also still attacking, sending missiles to other countries. And they're just being typical Iran assholes. So there's 2,500 Marines going over to secure that island, is all reports as of right now, and help secure the Straits of Hormuz. Trump's reached out to other countries and said, hey, because Iran said something to the effect of, we're only going to attack our enemies who are attacking us, which would be the U.S. Civilian ships. They have yet to touch any of our actual military ships. Israeli civilian ships, and anyone else that's involved in the coalition. But if you're not any of those countries, we're not going to attack you. So Trump said to a lot of the other countries, India, China, hey, get some warships and help escort you people through, essentially. And this will keep everything through the Straits of Hormuz. Now, the U.S. doesn't necessarily depend on the Strait of Hormuz for oil. It's the rest of the world. And I also think it's absolutely hysterical, and this tells you why OPEC is a giant piece of shit that OPEC is. Iran's oil is not on the OPEC market. It's these things called sanctions and all this other stuff. So Iran's destruction of their oil fields should not affect the overall prices. I understand the Straits of Hormuz can. I get that. But the overall oil from Iran is not in the market and shouldn't be affecting the market. But OPEC is what OPEC does, which is why energy independence is absolutely 100% needed. So the 2,500 Marines are going to go over there and secure it. I don't think it's going to go on for too much longer. I said last week, every time they light up a new missile, we hone in on it. We're taking them out. We're knocking them down a little bit at a time. But the best story that came out today, and this is just, I don't know if this is true, but our intelligence community is suggesting it is that this Ayatollah, I don't know what his name, the cardboard Ayatollah. Let me see if I can find a picture of him. Yes, I have a picture right here. Here we go. Allegedly, this Ayatollah has had a relationship with a male tutor for years and is in fact gay. Now, again, I can't confirm any of this, but oh my God, can you even begin to understand the irony if this is true? If he's in fact gay, which I don't care. Look, I'm not the one condoning throwing gay guys off buildings, and I don't care what life they lead. I hope they're happy and they're successful. Again, that's not me. Iran is the place that you're not allowed to be openly gay. You get murdered. And now it's coming out that he's allegedly gay. And I have a few memes, and you can go find them because the meme game for this one revelation has been absolutely astronomical. And here's the new Ayatollah after everyone finds out that he's gay, and that's him as cardboard flying off a building, which is what they do in Iran. That was one of my favorites. It's the irony that gets me. Maybe there's some truth to the fact that the people that protest the most might be, because we're seeing that in real time. The chat room's having a blast with this. And look, this is the guy who allegedly couldn't impregnate women because he was having impotence issues and had to be treated in the UK because they will go to a Western country for medical treatment when they need it. And maybe it wasn't impotence with women that was his problem. Maybe it was the fact that he really was not interested in the female anatomy. And apparently when Trump was told this, he just started out loud laughing. And this is all coming from the New York Post. But can you imagine the geopolitical? Imagine all of the IRGC, and they probably know. Look, when stuff like this, and you're such a prominent, a prominent figure, and you have things to hide in a country like this, people probably know, and they just don't talk about it because they don't want to get killed. If the Ayatollah isn't happy about people talking about his gay son, then there's a chance that they could get unalived, as they often do with anybody who Joshua, you're 100% right. So they probably knew, and this is the last meme I'll share on this, and this one's just ridiculous. God, I'm Ayatollah Khomeini and I'm gay. I'm going to throw myself off a building. It's just, you need to be able to laugh in this day and age, and you need to be able to look at the insanity of the world that we live in sometimes and just appreciate it. Unfortunately, Hezbollah has been attacking Israel. I know the Israelis are going and making a big push on the ground in Hezbollah, trying to wipe out the last of the Hezbollah. Look, I said before, we have all the attacks that have been in the U.S. We've seen that recently. We saw the threats out of, and you know, I tell you all the time, don't take my word for it. Don't take social media's word for it. Go and do some goddamn research. Whenever something comes up, and you go on social media, like I brought up last week, TikTok is just full of these absolute bot accounts who are spreading all this misinformation. One of the ones that I see a lot, though, is when people turn around and say, oh, how is Iran? Because we had the threat in California where they said the Iran's proxies or sleeper cells may be intending to use drones to attack American citizens. And I saw so many people turn around and say, well, their drones can't even fly that far. This has to be bullshit. And I just shake my head because they're not talking about the military-made Iranian drones. Clearly, they can't fly from Iran to California. That's just not going to happen. They're talking about using homemade personal drone, not homemade, but personal drones, and they have them now where they can release items on demand. You see that with what, Amazon and Walmart and their drone deliveries. An average person can get that, and they've been training to do that. And we saw this in Iraq. One of the Iranian proxies used a small drone with an explosive attached, and they flew it, and it's one of those 4-propeller, just personal drones, maybe a little bit more beefed up than a Holy Stone or something you buy off Amazon, but not an overly expensive one in the grand scheme of things. And they can fly into civilian areas, buildings, whatever, and drop the explosive or set it off, which they have the ability on drones. Some drones will do that now too. They'll activate a light that you can push button, but instead of activating a light, it activates an explosive. But just to watch so many people only take a short piece of the headline, and I know I'm like beating a dead horse on this show by talking about this, and I'm gonna keep beating this drum because I watch so many people just swallow a headline and swallow a TikTok meme or a regular meme or a post as gospel. Yeah, EOD operator, I am sure you could have one ready in about an hour. And I'm not saying you're not intelligent, but it's not hard if you have some minimal basic training. And that's what the warning was about that came out last week in California. So not like a little skeet shooting. Dude, I'll tell you, man, that would be a blast, huh? I'm sure drones, Jonathan said that in the chat room, I'm sure drones will at someday get cheap enough that you probably will be able to use it for skeet. I know what you mean about shooting these drones out of the sky, but I'm sure at some point that's going to be the new target. Pigeon, that's the word I was looking for. That's going to be the new pigeon at the gun ranges, throwing up a drone and seeing who can hit it and who can't. So we'll see. There was the unfortunate crash with the KC-135 in which 6 airmen died as a result, and it looks like 2 KC-135s. One was refueling the other one, it looks like. And again, I don't have the final report. You don't have the final report. I'm giving you what's released information. And there was some sort of miscommunication or error that cost the lives of 6 airmen, and that's Major John Klinner, Captain Ariana Savano, Tech Sergeant Ashley Pruitt, Captain Seth Koval, Captain Curtis J. Angst, and Tech Sergeant Tyler H. Simmons. So obviously a tragic loss, and we do feel for their families, and please keep them in your prayers. The Houthis are starting to make some threats again. The Houthis are allegedly the ones, and I brought up the Houthis before. All of these proxies require the Islamic regime of Iran to exist for them to continue existing. Iran funds all of them, if you did not know that. Iran gives them all weapons, if you did not know that. So their existence is dependent on Iran Islamic regime maintaining power. And I said this before, and they're going to, and we saw this with Hezbollah. Hezbollah, as soon as Israel really started to put the pressure back on them again, what was it, 4 or 5 days ago, they just started launching everything they had. And I'm sure some of it obviously was to target people, but also some of it was before it could get caught. I mentioned last week the Lebanese military starting to push Hezbollah out, which they should have been doing 25 years ago, but now the pressure's on, and that Iran can't focus an attack the Lebanese. And that's the other thing that gets lost in that. The reason the Lebanese military did not move on Hamas in the past is because they were afraid of what Iran would do to them. They've seen so many assassinations. They know Iran will kill them one at a time. They know Iran is the Quds leader is in Lebanon, or was Quds forces. They know they're in Palestine. They know they're with the Houthis. And now they're starting to make a push out, which is good. Look, I don't care how you feel about certain geopolitics. We can all agree that terrorist regimes who indiscriminately go in and murder children and kids at a rock concert and just blow up schools and all this stuff like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis have been doing for years, eliminating them is bad, right? Like, I think that should be like, that's like everyone agreeing that Hitler sucked, right? And Hitler was no good. And he was a monster and he was a horrible human being. The same about Stalin and Mao and Pol Pot, and the list goes on and on and on. We can use certain people to kind of unite around and go, yeah, I'm glad that fucking guy's dead. I'm glad. Are you glad? Yeah, we're glad. That's good. That's what it should be. That's who. And we don't see that in America right now, which is infuriating, because people would rather defend the Iranian regime and all of these terrorists. We saw the Michigan incident where, hey, hats off to that security guard who plugged that dude because he had a truck full of explosives and he was mad that his brother was killed by Israel. His brother was a Hezbollah militant leader. So yeah, definitely hats off to that dude. And I know I said this the other night, but hats off to the Old Dominion ROTC who beat the bag out of that other terrorist. That's a whole story that I'm not getting into tonight, but never should have happened. He never should have been walking free. Thank you again, Biden. But you can't even get Democrats and the progressives here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Bill Maher in a couple minutes, because Bill Maher has seen the canary in the coal mine. He's seen the writing on the wall. He's seen, and I don't necessarily know if Bill Maher is as much of a centrist as he portrays himself. Of late, he's portrayed himself as a very Kennedy Democrat, JFK Democrat from back in the day, where he's more to the center. Yeah, there's still some of the hippie things, which is fine. Like, I think most libertarians fall in line with that too. And it's just, hey, as long as I'm doing this in my house and I don't want you to bother me and cool. He's got some things I don't agree with. But Bill Maher has been screaming on the left side for a while of, hey, you idiots are going too far. And you're the entire reason why the Democratic Party looks like a whole bunch of assholes on a regular basis. Yeah, he is. And, you know, Joshua, sorry, I agree with you to a point. But I also try to keep in mind that if this is truly who he is, and he stays in his position because that's what he believes in his heart, I can respect that much more than somebody who picks and chooses a side in order to go for popularity. And he could be doing that. I don't know Bill Maher personally. I followed him for years. Jon Stewart back in the day used to be much more equal opportunity too, back when he was really funny. Even with things I didn't agree with, I used to think Jon Stewart was hilarious just because of the comedic writing, not necessarily because I agreed politically. Bill Maher, though, has taken it to a new level. And on his show, you know, I played the clip last week where he absolutely annihilated Adam Schiff with the whole Libya thing. But this week he's got that Sunday, I think it's a YouTube show where he sits around, he smokes pot with individuals and has conversations. And he had Jerry O'Connell, who's an 80s, 90s actor. And they were talking about Hollywood. And of course, last night was the Oscars and nobody gives a shit. But they're talking about Hollywood and how Hollywood needs to start like making some changes. And I want you to watch this for a second. And even if this isn't what is in his heart, he's at least making points that are valid.
They're not helping. They don't strike people as normal because they're fucking not. Democrats already have a problem with people thinking that they are not the common sense crowd. And then when they see, the Chappell Roans and the Billie Eilishes of the world who don't act like normal people, and then whatever they're saying just strikes everybody in America who's a normal person as, oh God, all right, here's more of this stuff where you can't relate to a real life. And of course there was comedy in there about it's so easy to show celebrities acting crazy. Democrats really need to cut loose the celebrities. They're not helping.
Conversation in the chat room right now with Joshua and a couple others is whether or not he believes it or if he's just saying it for the money. Either way, what he's saying right there is 100% factual. He had that whole speech where Nancy Mace was on about all the things that Democrats have somehow attached themselves to and then said, if you don't agree with us, you're a monster, you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, you're a racist, and how that is a wrong approach, and how it's shitty to put people in that sort of confines one way or the other and not have any discussion about things, which is what the Democrats were doing. Look at the trans issue. If you didn't immediately say, yes, I think the trans should 100% be grinding while I have children in the crowd in front of them in a library or school or whatever, if you didn't agree with that, you were immediately a bigot or a homophobe. And it does what Democrats love to do. They attach to the emotion to the issue and they go on the emotional attack because it's harder to defend emotion than it is logic, right? It's harder when people are all emotionally upset to turn around and try to have a logical conversation with them. And then they throw out the insults, the Nazis, the bigots, the homophobes, yada, 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 as kind of icing on the cake. That's the Democrats' approach for the last, 20 years now for everything. Every single thing that they approve or they try to push, then they immediately attach the emotion to it. I remember when he said that I hope America goes in recession just to hurt Trump in his first term. Yeah, I'm not saying Bill Maher's my favorite conservative out there, Joshua. Please don't get me confused. But one of the things that Bill Maher has done that most on the left won't do, and he took a lot of shit on the left for it, is he actually went and had dinner with Trump at the White House. And then he said he understood Trump. And I think Trump actually made a positive impression on him, and that he totally got where Trump was coming from and a lot of things and how Trump approaches things. But he also said that for all the mean, horrible shit that he said about Trump in the past, Trump was jovial with him. And he took a lot of guff from the left, especially the super progressive left. I see Anna Kasparian mentioned a few times. She was one of them. And he had absolutely annihilated her on where she would rather live. Iran and Israel last year, just destroyed her. But he actually came out and said good things about Trump afterwards, and the left went fucking crazy. And this whole thing was like, we can't essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, we can't sit on either side of the room and throw shit on each other and expect things to be accomplished, which I do agree with that approach. Conversation is key to solving problems, and you can agree where you can agree, and he's brought that up too, is saying, hey, there's a lot of things we agree on that don't get done because the progressive lunatics, he blames the progressive lunatics, stick their nose in and become a problem. And so many things are, I will never, ever, ever approve this just because Trump is attached to it. So, you know, like I said, he's definitely not my favorite person in the world. I definitely don't think he's a super conservative. But if what he has been saying the last couple years now is truly in his heart, and it's not just for sale, which it could be, I'll admit, then it's good to say, look, if Democrats start listening to Bill Maher as for policy and his approach, that's going to be really bad for conservatives. Because if all of a sudden they show that they're willing to hang out with more centrists and have more centrist ideal and separate themselves from the ultra progressives, that's where the independents start coming into play. And I want you to think about that as we go into the break. Speaking of, I need to take a break. Please like and subscribe. Thank you so much to everyone who's in chat. Thank you so much for everyone who's watching. Our memberships are open. If you want to join, you don't have to, but it's a great way to help support the channel and keep the lights on. We're not afraid to admit that we need the help when we can get it. We'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome to the SHR Media Shop. This is not just merch, it is a statement. SHR Media is built as a rebellion against the mainstream. We deliver truth without a filter or permission. When you wear our gear, you are standing for liberty and unapologetic free thought. Every piece is a badge of support for independent journalism. Wear it loud, wear it proud. Support the mission and join the rebellion at the SHR Media web store.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? And check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with Seven Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Welcome to the Reaver of Common Sense, where we cut through the noise of news and politics with a sharp edge. Tune in every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a refreshing dose of reality. We fearlessly tackle the tough topics with no nonsense, just pure common sense. Visit shrmedia.com to discover where you can catch the Reaver in action. He is here to amplify your inner logic. He may not always be polite. He may not always be refined. But one thing is for sure, he always tells it like it is. The Reaver of Common Sense.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Edge of Liberty here on the SHR Media Network. I want to talk about this because I don't think the media touched this story enough. And a lot of it has to do with that, how this all began to happen. Over the weekend, outside Riverside County, California, federal agents and local officers concluded what was called Operation Safe Return. They rescued 37 children who were being preyed upon by traffickers and identified over 50 missing kids across Southern California and Nevada. but that was just the beginning. So thank you so much, the Riddler, for your kind words. We greatly appreciate you. I want to remind everybody that under the Biden administration, with all these NGOs, with the kids that were flooding over the open borders and all these NGOs that were getting humongous government money, we're taking these kids and they're supposed to give them a safe place until they could be either reunited with family or what have you. 233,000 of them went missing. 233,000 of them went missing. Now, since Trump's came into office again last January, over 13,000 of those children have been located. I want you to really try to conceptualize those numbers. 233,000 missing children, unaccounted for, from ages of birth to 18. We found a lot of them, if you remember, working in meat packing plants and other ones last year. Joshua was saying there's 345. Yeah, I know some numbers have it up over 300,000. Even worse, because when you look at those numbers and you look at the massive amount, I mean, that's small cities. And the city I grew up in, right outside Boston, is 100,000 people right now. It's 3 times that if it's up over 300,000. Even if it's not, even if that 233 is accurate, it is mind-blowing, evil, and disgusting. And it's incredible to me how when you have an operation like this, the news looks the other way. Why? Well, because a lot of this was caused by the open borders, and they don't want to talk about that, so they don't want to talk the victory of that. Like I said, yeah, there's trafficking everywhere. Mark said there's trafficking in Detroit. Every major city has it. And from what I've been told, just from cops that I know and stuff like that, it's the medium cities that are the problem, because the medium cities don't necessarily have the law enforcement infrastructure to actually save these kids. But that's neither here nor there. We could talk about the operational part all along. I just want to talk about how the media is burying these stories and how it's insane. They've caught 80 kids harvesting marijuana in California, according to Joshua. Yeah, it's everywhere. And I'm going to go through some of those stories as well. Operation Home for the Holidays in Florida and across 9 other states rescued 122 kids in just one operation. Operation Northern Lights across the Gulf Coast saved 43 kids. Operation We Will Find You was a 6-week sweep that located 200 critically missing children. And since January 2025, the Department of Homeland Security has located over 145,000 unaccompanied adults that were essentially lost by the previous administration. And not all of those were reported missing. And you have to understand how missing persons works. Unaccompanied is different, because unaccompanied means that they were never reported. They were never in the system. They just went missing. And nobody ever picked up the phone and said, hey, this kid's missing, because they were afraid to, because they shouldn't have been missing. And it was why we found out that huge number of those NGOs, which gruesomely, in my opinion, and some will say intentionally, allowed those kids to disappear. It's absolutely disgusting that the shitbag news media in this country will not highlight stories like this. Why? Because, Orange Man bad. That's their whole approach. You will never see, outside of a couple, give credit to this administration for anything that's positive. Can you imagine being the parent? I'm a parent. I have 2 kids. If my kids went missing, I'd be out of my mind. And I don't care what country I live in, or what have you, that creates a lot of these circumstances. And you picture finding these kids who've been sold off into trafficking, sold off into this, sold off into that. And like some people say, they're being forced to work in marijuana farms. They're being forced to work in illegal drug labs. They're being trafficked back south across the border, and all of the horrific things. And that does not include the sex trafficking. I haven't even mentioned that yet, which is a humongous portion of it. If you go down into Southern California and Northern California, you go to these high prostitution areas, you see these 16, 17-year-old girls out there. And we know that because social media, something social media does well. And yeah, they also, unfortunately, potentially could be harvested as well. So people may not remember, under the first Trump administration, the marshals used to run these operations a lot too. And you didn't hear about that then either. And those were kids that were reported missing. And that happened quite a bit. It's always been a focus of the Trump administration, and this one as well. And a lot of it is because of the Laken Riley Act. And Trump's work with that, and then obviously getting law enforcement to get themselves in gear, and giving them people. You can go back. I remember this when the when Biden came into office, they stopped a lot of the funding for a lot of these operations and forced them to do other stuff. So, you have one administration who is putting focus on finding kids, and the other one who is ignoring it and lost anywhere between 233,000 and 345,000, depending on which estimates you look at. It's just heartbreaking. It goes back to why the open borders disaster of all the things in this country, that open borders has destroyed. I honestly think politics is politics. I get that. I get voting before everyone in the chat room jumps down. I get all of that. But the fact that 250 to 350,000 kids were allowed to go missing because of these open borders. Because in my opinion, the Democrats were so hungry for redistricting, and they were so hungry to change the balance of power in this country, that they absolutely let those kids be victimized. And it's grotesque. Our children are our most innocent asset, our most innocent aspect of our society, is what I meant to say. And the fact that anybody would allow that to happen. And look, we know how these NGOs are, because we see them with the homeless too. They get all that government money. They don't give a shit about applying it to where it's supposed to be applied. They just want the money. They pay off their people. And then whatever happens to the kids, the NGOs don't care. And then just like drug dealers, you go down to that next tier, and they're making money off those kids in other ways. And you go down to the tier after that and the tier after that. And this is where we end up. And it's an unbelievably horrific disservice that the mainstream media has done to this country by not at least reporting it, because it is a major deal. Let's see. I got a couple more stories I want to talk about tonight. Talk a little bit about the UK. Do I want to talk? Yeah. So Gavin Newsom, I stay in California for a little bit because I haven't beaten up on Gavin in a few weeks, and this just seems like a damn good time too. Gavin Newsom has been on his book tour, which, if you know anything about Gavin Newsom, his whole job is to do anything but actually be a governor in the state of California lately. He is, a big anti-Trump propagandist nationally. That's what he does. He is running for president. We know that. He's trying to make money off his book grift. I told you last week, I did talk about Newsom last week, but I told you last week how he and his wife made money off of grants that were funneled through NGOs and back into his wallet. Gavin Newsom and his Izzy and the other two little idiots that work on his campaign, or his press office, sorry, it's a campaign, but a press office, are just the ultimate in grifters. Everything that he does is a lie. Everything he does is bullshit. All he does is try to drop these one-liners that can be used in social media to try to seem like he's this unbelievably smart and savvy human being, when he's really the biggest, greasiest, horrific, narcissistic, I can't say that, prick that's in politics today. Look, there's a lot of them who fit that bill. I understand that. Gavin brings it to a new level, and he has been for years. Like I said, Gavin hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is now he says Orange Man bad things, and the mainstream media and progressive left just bark like seals and applaud, and it doesn't matter how ridiculous his claims are. They just sit there and try to massage him because the enemy of the enemy is my friend. They're not going to vote for him. Polling's already shown that. He's not going to be there's no way do I believe that he'll be the DNC nominee. But they're using him like they do with so many others, like they did with Bernie or whatever, because right now his light is light enough that it's reaching enough people that he's a useful idiot. And the worst part is, like Kamala, he thinks he is in charge. He thinks like he's the man. And if you follow politics, and if you look at this from a 30,000-foot view, he is absolutely a useful idiot at best. And when it comes time that these primaries are going to start, which is going to be any time now, really start soon, you're going to see that the Democrats are going to try to elect the black woman and the gay guy. I think that's going to be they're going to absolutely, they're convinced that the reason Kamala didn't get elected is because they didn't lie enough and she wasn't in front of enough people for long enough for people to really like her. And then they're going to throw Buttigieg at it because they need to check that box, because that's what Democrats do. It's all about checking boxes, right? Drew Wisdreck says, my mom is Obama's biggest fan, and now she hates him. A lot of people have come around to that. They see, when you have the luxury of time and to look back and you see the reality and you see the big picture, you start realizing how horrific a lot of people were. But let's beat up on Gavin. So Gavin went out in part of his book tour, and he said this with 100% confidence in his voice. He's talking about how wonderful California is and how great of a governor he is. And I'm going to let him dig his own grave, and they'll come back and comment.
Rates in America, Texas, the most regressive. Texas taxes poor folks more than we tax our richest. The question for you is, who's the higher tax state? California or Texas? Who are you for? Are you just for the 1%? Or are you for the 99%? And so our whole approach, that's what a
Dear God, if he brings back the we are the 99% chance, holy shit. Well, I don't know if I'll be able to handle that. Oh God, Occupy Wall Street lives. He always crosses, Joshua says, yeah, I mentioned how he crosses his legs. I don't understand as a male how you can cross your legs like that and be at all comfortable. I'm not saying, I'm not passing judgment in the sense of I know what's going on with him, but it's really weird. So anyhow, he makes this ridiculous statement. He goes out and he portrays it on his ex like he is just 100% factual on this. And it only took a few minutes for somebody posted the reality. And this is from Wallet Hub 2025. Now, if you don't know who Wallet Hub is, they track all this sort of stuff. Yeah, they're a private company. If anything, in this field, it kind of would think that they would lean left because that's usually what happens. And I'm not saying that's entirely the case. But let's go through the top 5 tax-burdened states in the United States of America. And amazingly, number 1's Hawaii. Total tax burden is 13.9%. Property tax 2.57. Individual tax 4.18. Total sale and excise tax burden 7.17. New York second, 13.56. Florida 28, 576. Yada yada yada. California is the 4th. Total tax burden in California is 11%. Total property tax burden is 2.78. individual income tax burden 4.87, and excise tax burden 3.35. Their fourth most tax, and I know this because I live here, in the country. And Gavin Newsom knows this. He's not stupid, even if he's a moron. He's a greasy politician. He's a lying sack of shit who will say anything to sell a book or absolutely gain some power or think he's going to gain power. And this is another story from California, and this is under Newsom's watch because he's been governor now forever, it seems like. It just won't go away. CBS News reports hundreds of California businesses registered with the Secretary of State may be fraudulent. And this is the guy who wants to be the president. More than 800 business registrations filed last year in California may have been fraudulent, according to CBS News California. The figure represents a small portion of the more than 3 million businesses registered in 2025. Okay, I still don't know. I still don't know why people are registering businesses in California, but I look, to each their own. Listening Post Studio says, suck it, Sean, I'm better than you. Wait, this might mean I'm worse. You're definitely worse than me, my friend. Identity theft experts say criminals are creating fake business entities by targeting a specific population, legal immigrants. People can register a business, such as a limited liability or stock corporation, through California Secretary of State. Typically, it requires cursory information about the business name, who's a part of the business, and a fee. It's $800, by the way. The Secretary of State's office says using it to secure the portal means stronger protection from businesses around identity theft. So we talk about fake businesses and we talk about illegals, and look, everything that you see in Minnesota and all the other states with the child care fraud and all that other shit, it's definitely happened in California too. And these are just the ones that they know of in California. That's not all of them. That's just the ones that they know of. And as you and I both know, when it comes to crime, you never get all of them whatsoever. Speaking of Michigan, well, I mentioned Minnesota, but we'll talk. I mentioned Michigan earlier. So it works. Give me a fucking break. I was close. Minnesota, Michigan. I know where they are. There was a car theft ring busted in Dearborn, Michigan. The group, including Mohammed Al-Hilo and Mohammed Al-Ali, common spellings, are charged with stealing over 400 vehicles valued at $40 million from 2023 to 2025 and shipping them to the Middle East. So, you know, it's not just daycare fraud and healthcare fraud and all the other frauds that they're doing. It's cars too. They're stealing cars too. And, you know, I understand that most of them are doctors and lawyers just trying to find a job, and some of them, you know, find other jobs in other places. I'm kidding when I say I know they're all doctors and lawyers. I feel, yeah, in Dearborn, Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan? No way. Yeah, well, isn't Dearborn the city that has Islamic writing on the police patch now? So yeah. Oh, I forgot this meme earlier. It's not really a meme. It's just a photo. But when I was talking about the gay Ayatollah, there are so many that were put up so fast. I could not keep up with them when I was trying to prep for the show. I mentioned earlier the homeless issues under Gavin Newsom. Did you know that Dearborn, Stan. I saw somebody say, I lived and grew up in New York and our price of beer were insane. Yeah, I believe that. New York's an expensive state as well. The city of Los Angeles, speaking of the homeless crisis, bought a Ramada Inn for $10.2 million to house the homeless. I want you to think about that for a second. They bought an old hotel for $10.2 million of tax money. I guarantee you federal tax money was included, so don't just say, well, that's just California. No. When they make purchases like this, they grab from all the coffers. Since then, they started sending money to the NGOs to take over the project. As I mentioned earlier, as it goes, the NGOs start getting all of this money and do nothing with it. Prepare not to be surprised by what happens next, because you're not going to be fucking shocked at all. The recent audit and report on it says no work is being done and there's money laundering going on. One person was quoted saying, "For years, neighbors say the construction has been slow. Where are the workers? Where's the urgency? For almost 4 years, the property has sat unfinished. And why does it take so long with such a giant waste of money? Because Gavin Newsom is your governor. That's why it took so long and there was such a large waste of money." Let's see. We were talking about expensive states, red states, blue states, and all the most expensive states. I know BZ talked about the new wealth tax that's going on in Washington. I think everybody on the network has, if I'm being completely honest. I know Big E did as well. But I have to mention it because if nothing, media is not repetitive on some level. But Starbucks now joins a list of companies fleeing Washington. Starbucks is taking off from Washington. Remember, it started in Seattle. The former CEO announced last week that he was moving to Florida because of the new Washington tax laws. I just saw a report that the Washington Ecological Division, whatever their We Love the Land people is for the state of Washington, is now, they have what's called holding ponds, and a lot of farmers have them. I guess they're like retention ponds to hold water so they can feed and water their cattle. And this Washington, I'm sorry, saying California, this Washington Environmental Bureau is now fining people for having illegal ponds. Many of these ponds have been on the property for dozens, if not decades of years. Decades of years? Dozens of years work. Decades of work was all bad. And they're billing people unbelievable in the millions of dollars, and some fining them for having these quote unquote illegal ponds because, you know, government controls water and rain apparently. But now you're seeing Starbucks getting the fuck out of Washington as well. And this is exactly what happens to blue states. Starbucks isn't going to Florida. Starbucks is going, I want to say it was Tennessee or Kentucky. It was one of the two where a lot of people are starting to move their business to. But just think about that. As all of these progressive states, California, Washington, Oregon, all celebrating how they're taxing the rich, you see exactly what happens. Companies and people of wealth who create jobs, a lot of jobs, whether you like the company, you don't like the company, they create jobs, they create income, and it's not just the coffee sold over the counter, it's the transportation of the coffee, it's the planning. They're moving to Tennessee. Thank you, Mission Ready Men. And then when they leave a corporate headquarters such as Starbucks leaves, they take all of that money with them. Yeah, they're still going to have stores in Seattle, but in Washington, but it's not going to be the same as the humongous amount of taxes that they would be paying if you just didn't act like fucking communists. Look, you want to be Canada, where 50% of your taxes goes right to the government, and you have the highest housing cost, you have the lowest housing rate because people can't afford it, and they don't have enough housing. If you want to go down that road where you're actually having a year with zero growth, if you want to go down that road, keep doing shit like this. Do you think other companies are not going to follow suit? Do you think other companies are going to go, yeah, you know what, if Starbucks is going, we're going? What about all the companies that work with Starbucks from their distribution areas and stuff like that up there? You think they're going to hang out up there, or they're going to follow them to Tennessee? So it never ends with the ridiculousness of the left and how they tax the shit out of people. I know Big E just did a big show about this last Thursday, but it's absolutely mind-boggling to me that there's just all of these progressive communist leaders are just like, nope, more taxes, more taxes, more taxes. And the idea that, and we see this in California too, people love living here, so they'll pay for it. Not so fucking much. If you're lucky, they might come visit. And lastly, speaking of progressive lunatics, I want to show you what grasping for relevancy looks like. Ben Stiller, who I used to think was so fucking funny, one of my favorite movies is Tropic Thunder, who's turned into a humongous libtard moron and just has to inject himself in politics every chance he gets, has apparently released a soda. Now, you would think, in a semi-famous celebrity that Ben Stiller is, there'd be a lot of people excited if he was doing an appearance This is Ben Stiller, and I don't know where this was. I don't know exactly what store it is. This is Ben Stiller in a store trying to promote his new soda that he released, and look at the amount of people swarming him. Gotta kill that music. YouTube will beat me in the face if I let that music play. He's tired, stretching his back, looking like a lizard. And just watch, like, he knows this person's videoing him, and they're videoing him because it's like, holy shit, it's Ben Stiller, and nobody's paying attention to him. And he's like trying to do that. I'm super cool and hip, and I get what's going on. But he's just sitting there all by himself. And the other thing, and I know I'm running a couple minutes over here, the other thing I want to be honest about, and I think is something that does not get enough attention in this country, and I think it's something that we need to be serious about. It's plastic surgery and knowing when to stop. Ben Stiller looks like a fucking lizard now because of the amount of plastic surgery that he's had. I don't know if you saw that in the video, but people need to stop going to a plastic surgeon because they think it's going to somehow make them more appealing. I've said this with, you see it a lot with women, where you have a beautiful woman who's aging gracefully, and then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, she looks like somebody put 14 pounds of Play-Doh on her face, and it's slowly melting off in the sun. I am not an attractive human being. I pretty much never have been. But if I had billions and billions of dollars, I still wouldn't get plastic surgery. You know why? Because it's really weird when somebody walks up to you and their face looks like this. It's and celebrities are doing it left and right now. And look, maybe it's going to work for them, but I just don't think so. It's an epidemic in this country that needs to end. And people, look, if you know somebody who's considering horrible plastic surgery, and I'm not saying like get a little thing cleaned up, whatever makes you feel good about yourself. I'm talking about like the complete plastic reconstruction. Yeah, Helen Mirren is still beautiful. I agree with you. She is. Have this conversation with them and show them pictures of celebrities that look like lizards that once used to look like absolute normal people, and help them out. Friends don't let friends turn into lizards. And that's going to be my public service announcement for the night. Folks, that's it for me. Thank you so much for being here on the Edge of Liberty on the SHR Media Network. If you have it in your heart, please sign up for a membership. We'd greatly appreciate it. If not, just hit the like and subscribe button. SHRmedia.com. You can go over there and you can grab the shirts. The 250th birthday shirt for the United States that we have, 250 Reasons to Read Source Documents, is over there, as well as all of the shows. Bjorn Bullstein that just started with us, his new shirt's up there. It's super awesome. I'm kind of jealous of it. I'm not going to lie. Our friends over at Seven Armors and Carry Girl did such a great job designing that shirt that I'm a little jealous. I'm a little jelly, not going to lie. So you can grab them. You can grab some cups. All that stuff is over there. Just check it out. I'm going to be back every Monday. And listening post is going to be the last comment I post tonight because that was outstanding. I'm going to be back. I'm here every Monday and Wednesday. He screwed me all up. 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast on the Edge of Liberty. Every Tuesday, Thursday morning. That is tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon on the East Coast. You have Mission Ready Men with my man Big E. Tuesday and Thursday nights, you have BZ's and BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast. Monday and Fridays, my guy Jersey Joe, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 on the East Coast with the Reaver of Common Sense. And then the new guy is Friday and Saturdays at 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and that's Bjorn Bullstein. And The Lost Wanderer made an appearance this past Sunday night on SHR Media, which he will do from time to time with The Lost Wanderers show, and check that out as well. Thank you so much for being here. Please take care of yourself. I'll be back Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Pacific. I'll talk to you then. Everything froze. Everything froze. Weird.